I gotta say, this was a fun one. It's one that many pastors, can you hear me now with this? Is that okay? Can't hear me with this one either?
Yeah.
You can hear this one, okay. Okay. When I was in St. Louis, one of the jobs I had was to work as a registrar for adult students at Maryville University in St. Louis. And I put any number of adult students in management courses and financial management courses. So I thought, oh, well, this passage sounds like financial management 101. And I thought about it, and I thought, well, maybe last week's was financial management 101, and this isn't. But you know what? I don't really care, because I never really understood those business courses anyway, any more than I understand what is going on in this passage today. Now, that said, many pastors turn the page and look at the other readings for the week. I, however, am going to trot on and then make up the ending, okay? It's not that I didn't try to understand this passage. I read any number of commentaries on it, and I'll pick 3 of the best and only read you a snippet from each, because they go on and on in theological language trying to explain what doesn't seem to make sense, and that this shrewd, dishonest manager gets commended for being shrewd and dishonest. But anyway, Lois Malcolm, all these people are college instructors, theologians who teach at seminaries. Lois Malcolm says this: a dishonest manager is about to lose his job because he has misspent his employer's assets. Well, even I got that. Because he doesn't want to do manual labor or receive charity, he goes around to all the people who owe his employer money and reduces their debts. He does this so that they will be hospitable to him after he loses his job. Yeah, there's that. To our surprise, the employer commends the dishonest manager for his shrewdness. And she then asks 2 questions. Why is he commended? And why does Luke include this story in the gospel? Those are good questions. And I especially want to know the answer to the second one. There's so much really good stuff to put in. Why is this here? And why is other stuff not here? David Luce says this: when a passage is particularly difficult or confusing, sometimes it's helpful to ask questions, certainly of yourself and possibly of your congregation. So, congregation, these are for you. Why is the dishonest manager commended? Same question as Lois Malcolm. Anybody want to bite on that one? Yeah, Ann?
Well, it doesn't say how he was dishonest, but obviously some things with business is cheating your customers. So maybe by reducing their bill, that's cutting out some of the cheating.
Yeah, if you inflate a bill.
Perhaps the guy wasn't able to collect the money from these people, and so he was glad to get part of what they owed him.
Okay, so far I'm hearing rationalizations. Anybody else want to give it a shot?
I'm just gonna go a whole different route. I'm thinking if he's gonna do the wrong thing, he's just gonna glorify God in the whole process of him being a cheat. I don't know. So he's like Robert Peter.
This is my gift. I'm really good at cheating. Thank you for the spiritual gift.
He tried.
He tried, right? He tried. There's all this stuff.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Who is he cheating?
It doesn't say.
Well, he's cheating the owner for whom he is the manager.
The owner.
For whom he is the manager. I didn't ask you to ask another question, by the way. I asked you to answer the question that was asked, just so you know. Here's an even better question. This is David Luce's question. What is dishonest wealth And what does it mean to make use of it? What is dishonest wealth? Ed, you can answer, but you cannot ask a question. Dishonest wealth.
Accumulating wealth in a shady way.
Okay. Anybody ever do it?
President.
Sorry,
that slipped out.
Rick?
John Rockefeller did it, he basically blew up his competitors. So he
Okay.
didn't have any competitors, that's how he built up his empire. So that's where Rockefeller's making money.
Okay. Anybody else ever personally come upon dishonest wealth? When I lived in St. Louis, I would walk my dog at night. And one night as I'm walking my dog around this very large block in St. Louis, I spied with my little eye what looked like money on a lawn that we were passing by. So I went over to see if it really was money or something that was a facsimile of money. It was a $100 bill. So I'm trying to figure out what to do with this. Honestly, what should I do? So I'm thinking, well, if I turn it into the police, they'll spend it. Where's Sue when we need her? What am I supposed to do? Knock on doors and see if there's any drug money hanging loose that somebody's missing? So I did what I thought was the best situation. I pocketed the $100 bill. Now at the time, I was a teaching fellow at St. Louis University, making $8,500 a year. And when I applied for a credit card, I went into Macy's or somewhere, and they said, "Oh, you must have left a zero off your salary." Said, "Yeah, I wish I left a zero off my salary." So anyway, so Mary comes to visit, and we have a friend who lives in Florissant, Missouri, which is the northern part of St. Louis, who is a nun. So we say, "Hey, Joan, want to go to dinner?" So we go, "It won't cost us anything." So the three of us go to dinner at this really nice seafood restaurant. And when it comes time to pay the bill, it's like, "Here, you take the $100 bill and pay it. No, you take the $100 bill and pay it." So we said, "Joan, you take the $100 bill and pay for dinner." And she did. So what I did was find money and give it to a nun to use as she would wish. You know what? That's about as great a rationalization as any of the commentaries I read on this passage. Caroline Lewis says this: "The point of Jesus' story is not to bash the wealthy. Often our homiletical impulses, that means those who like to preach, are too quickly dissolved into the binaries of the world. Case in point, when we preach that you have to choose God over money. Right? The gospel is not that easy as much as we want it to be. Jesus is not calling out the rich. Jesus is calling out our loyalties, not only to God, but also to that which in your life enables you to be who God has called you to be, which in Debbie Small's terminology is a really good thief, apparently." She goes on to say, "A skewed loyalty to the church couched in self-sacrifice ends up only communicating to others that if they do not have the same kind of loyalty to God, they might ask themselves, will God really see me? And does God really love me?" So, here we are. Each of these theologians went on in numerous paragraphs to explain the premise that they opened with their questions. But I decided I would raise some questions of my own, because why not? Everybody else did. And the passage ends with, "You cannot serve God in wealth." And I think we've heard that before, and we've probably thought about it before and pondered it, and then took the $100 bill and went to dinner. I think another way to phrase this is what St. Augustine does when he says, God gave us people to love and things to use. An original sin, and that's not our language, but that's his, manifests itself in our penchant to confuse those two, loving things and using people. I think there's something to be said about that. So when we think about all these passages that we've had these past several weeks that seem to be on some theme of, you know, do we leave the 99 and go in search of the one, putting at risk the 99? Is that good wealth management if you're a shepherd? What do we do with these things that keep coming up? Or what about the week before last, when Jesus tells his disciples they need to give up all their possessions to follow him? Remember that one? 2 weeks ago. Before that, Jesus says this: when you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or sisters or your relatives or rich neighbors, in case they may invite you in return and you should be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you. It just seems like we keep getting this theme of what's the right thing to do, and what does it have to do with the wealth that we have, whatever that wealth is. And the last Sunday in August, Jesus healed the bent-over woman. Why does he do that? He does it on the Sabbath, and he risks the censure and criticism of the leader of the synagogue. So there it's more power than wealth. But we're still like, what is the right thing to do? What is the right thing to do? The week before that, Jesus says, well, I didn't come here to bring peace. I came here to bring division. Y'all going to be divided among yourselves. It's going to be 2 against 3 in this family, and 3 against 2 in that family. And you're going to be upset with your parents, and you're going to lead them, and your brothers and sisters are going to be upset with you. That was certainly an uplifting passage. Before that, he writes, do not be afraid, little flock, for it is your Abba's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give alms. Make purses for yourselves that do not wear out, an unfailing treasure in heaven. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Talked about that one too. The week before that, teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me. Anybody have that situation? But Jesus said, friend, who set me up to be judge or arbitrator over you? Take care, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. Seems like there's a lot of financial management stuff going on in these last several weeks that we've been looking at the gospel, and yet not. You know, at one point when I was looking at these this week, I thought, gosh, a better pastor than me would have turned these into a really powerful stewardship campaign. But being the foolish pastor that I am, I just let you know that give to God what you can. It's up to you and God, not up to me or anybody else in here. That's what it's about. It's between you and God. So having looked at these questions, I decided I had my own questions. And they're not just of today's scripture, they're of a number of scriptures. And the first question I wanted to ask Jesus was, how come you wasted a miracle on that water to wine trick? What was that about?
Pressure from mom.
Why, when you healed Peter's mother-in-law, did she get out of bed and wait on him and you? The woman's sick. What's the deal with the 9 lepers that didn't come back to thank you? What happened to them? Why did you wait so long to go to Lazarus that you had to raise him from the dead instead of just healing him and cause his sisters all that grief? He was supposed to be one of your best pals. Why didn't Pontius Pilate grow a backbone and do the right thing instead of sending you off to be whipped and crucified? And what happened to the second thief? The one that didn't acknowledge that he had done something wrong and that you were innocent. And the more I thought about these, the more I began to question and wonder about some of the things that I've seen in my life and you've seen in your lives. And I have these questions for Jesus that don't show up in the scripture in any way that I could find. Why did the boy on rollerblades, who just rolled past me last night and waved, lose his mom to cancer this year? He's only 14. Why do children get cancer and die at the age of 5 instead of living into old age? Why did the people of Puerto Rico and the Bahamas, who have so little, suffer so much from those 2 hurricanes? How come Americans with automatic weapons choose to harm people, especially those in El Paso, Dayton, Orlando, and Sandy Hook, to name just a few? People out shopping or eating or dancing or learning their ABCs. Why those innocents? And what's up with the children at the border being caged? Why are there babies with strangers instead of their fathers and mothers who carried them hundreds of miles to what they believed would be a safe haven? I pondered these a lot more than I pondered today's scripture. Are we following the last line of today's passage? And are we doing what St. Augustine claims we are called to do? You know, when I looked at the questions that I've raised about Scripture, I thought, well, I think Jesus just loved his mother enough to do what she asked. That's why he turned the water to wine. And I thought, why did Peter's mother-in-law wait on him? I think she's just really grateful and wanted to show that gratitude in the way she could. What about the 9 lepers? He asked where they are, but he doesn't judge them. Why did Lazarus die before he got to him? Oh, he was on his way. But it seemed there were other people on that same way in need of healing. And he stopped and healed them and was late. Pontius Pilate? Oh gosh, he's just a human being like us who sometimes does very bad things because he's afraid. And the second thief? He's in heaven with the first one. I can't say I have any answers to the questions I raised that are my questions, not in Scripture, but which I would ask Jesus if he gave me an audience. You know, there's this stuff called natural law that happens And so some of us inherit diseases that other people in our family had, and some of us just get disease because our bodies, for whatever reason, are not immune to those diseases. And hurricanes and tornadoes and floods and tsunamis happen because meteorologically the conditions created those. What I do know is that none of those things were God's will. What I do know is that God doesn't pick out people and say, you get cancer, ha ha. Or you get Alzheimer's, and people get to lose you twice. Yesterday, we had an unexpected visit to the vet with our dog Choo Choo. Choo Choo is, I probably have told many, if not all of you, is 15 years old and suffers from pulmonary hypertension and a heart murmur. So we got the lecture from the vet. The lecture that says, well, right now, the medical protocols are working. But at some point, they'll stop working, and then we're just going to have to deal with quality of life. And I looked at him and I said, you know what? We did not rescue this kid as a puppy. We rescued him as a 9-year-old because we believe it's really sad for an animal to spend his or her last days in a shelter instead of a home. And he came over and shook my hand to that. I was finishing tweaking the sermon this morning, and Noah, our other dog, kept looking at me. And I finally gave him the signal that he could come sit in my lap, which is all he really wanted to do. And when I pray, and I don't know how you all do it, but when I pray, I often listen to music. I mean, music lifts my soul and puts me in a different realm. So I had on one of my favorite CDs. Do you remember those CDs? Those are things old people like me know how to play. And it was by the monks of Weston Priory in Vermont. I've been to Weston Priory a number of times and actually have done retreats there. I love it. It's a very peaceful place. But as I held Noah, the words that the monks were singing were these: for God is love. God is love. And I think that's what we need to hold on to when we have those really hard questions arise in our lives and we have no answer. But we do have belief in this God that loves us so much that we know our God will never leave us alone. But whatever it is we're going through, our God is going through with us. God doesn't just walk by and pat us on the head and go, keep up the good work. God stops, like he did on the way to Lazarus' house, and takes us by the hand and holds us and comforts us. And for those who can't be cured, for those who are already over the edge, for those who are on that journey, he is on that journey with us. Doesn't walk by us, he stops, he makes time for us, and he walks with us as we take what we believe are the hardest steps in our lives. So I don't know what this passage is about, but I do know that God loves us.